Hello and welcome to Eye on Africa here on France 24. I'm Clarisse Fortuné. First, the headlines. Kizza Besigye is charged with treason, a capital offense in Uganda. The opposition politician has been in detention since his abduction in Kenya in November. The year 2025 marks the 25th anniversary of International Mother Language Day. For South Africa Basic Education Minister, mother tongues improve education outcomes. And artists are paying tribute to the work of Frédéric Bruly Bouabré. The artist invented a syllabary for the Ivorian Bété people language. An exhibition marks the 10th anniversary of his death. Ugandan opposition politician Kizza Besigye has been charged with treason, a capital offense in Uganda. So if found guilty, the opposition could be sentenced to death. Just this week, a judge had rejected a demand to release the opposition leader on health ground. Juliette Montilli followed the story.
Kizza Besigye, a four-time presidential candidate in Uganda, appeared in a Kampala courtroom today, sitting in a wheelchair as he faced new serious charges: treason and concealment of treason, both carrying the death penalty. Besigye had been on a hunger strike to protest his detention, but his lawyer announced today he's now ended it after the case was moved to a civilian court. Besigye's detention has sparked protests across Uganda and drawn sharp criticism from the Commonwealth, as well as human rights organizations like Amnesty International, who has called for his immediate release. The 68-year-old opposition leader has been in custody since November 16th, when he went missing in the Kenyan capital, Nairobi. A few days later, he was brought before a military court in Kampala, accused of threatening national security. He now remains in custody and is expected back in court on March 7th.
Niger's national conference ended with a proposal to return the country to non-military rule after a 5-year transition period, which means the current military government will stay in power until then. The proposal awaiting the junta's approval includes abolishing all political parties and authorizing the creation of no more than 5 parties. Junta leader Abdurrahman Chani will be able to stand as a candidate in the proposed election. Howell Gerald has more.
The military transition in Niger will carry on at least for another 3 years. That's 5 years minimum in total. That's what the 700 delegates wished for in their closing argument. They also proposed that Abdurrahman Chani becomes a 5-star general and the new president of Niger without going through an election. The participants also suggested that all members of the military junta who perpetrated the July 2023 coup would be granted amnesty.
You were completely free to reach this outcome, and conscious of your responsibilities, I solemnly commit myself to make those goals a reality for the happiness of the Nigerian people. I will take all the necessary measures.
In the coming years, dissident voices are expected to be even more silenced. Delegates also asked for the dissolution of all political parties in Niger, even if their activities have already been suspended for 18 months now. Thursday, 2 international NGOs called the Sahelian authorities to stop attacks on human rights defenders and political opposition.
President Cyril Ramaphosa invited Volodymyr Zelensky to visit South Africa for talks on ending the conflict in Ukraine, which was invaded by Russia nearly 3 years ago. Zelensky thanked Ramaphosa for supporting Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity and said he hoped for peace this year. Our focus tonight is on education. We talked earlier to South Africa Basic Education Minister Siviwe Gwarube. She was in Paris to attend the 25th anniversary of UNESCO International Mother Language Day. She says children perform better in school when taught in their mother tongue.
What's really important is to recognize that it's not just about linguistic diversity, which of course South Africa doesn't lack any. We've got 12 official languages, but it's also about what we've seen and what the research is showing us, that children who, particularly in the foundation phase, are taught in their mother tongue, often are able to grasp complex concepts and they develop cognitively quicker and better than children who are not taught in their mother tongue. And so for me, one of the biggest responsibilities that I have as a new minister in the basic education sector in South Africa is to really improve our our education outcomes, because we've seen international benchmarking tests that show that we're not doing well when it comes to reading for meaning, particularly for children under the age of 10. And so to improve that, we've got to look at a whole basket of solutions. And one of those things is to look at how do we use mother tongue education to really reinforce cognitive abilities so that children may be able to learn other languages, but also more complex subjects.
So you said 12 languages, but unity is a key word in South Africa these days. How do you reconcile unity and all these different languages?
I think one of the great things about South Africa is that we've learned to live and embrace our diversity. And so while we have all these different languages and all these different cultures, but ultimately there is a recognition of why different languages are important and why different cultures are important. And these blend together very well. And so you will not find that kind of cultural conflict or tension. So really the view is, and this is the view that I also expressed at UNESCO today, to say that we are not saying we're replacing, for instance, English, which a lot of parents, for instance, would be nervous about saying, look, English is a universal language. We want to be able to make sure that our children are learning English. But we're saying that if you start your children, particularly at a foundation phase, from 0 to 4 in their mother tongue, and continue that for several years, they're able to grasp a second language, a third language, and learn quicker in a different language than when you immediately switch them off at a mother tongue. So it's really about the cognitive science behind it. We had neuroscientists at UNESCO today who are telling us about why these things are important. And so really in an effort to really improve education outcomes in South Africa, this is something that I really want us to pursue. And of course, as we're having the G20 presidency this year, one of the things that we are going to be focusing on is how do we as the G20 countries look at how we can share skills. And I want to make sure that South African children are able to compete globally so that they can be able to work in different places around the world. And that's really the importance and the value of being able to host the G20 in this year.
And talking about reticence, President Ramaphosa signed the Bella law, so the basic education laws, amendment bill that gives the government oversight over school language and admission policies. And the main reason for that was to prevent some children to be excluded. What do you think about that?
Well, I mean, I think, look, I mean, there are many good things about the Bella Act. It's just it's been unfortunate that it has been a divisive piece of legislation in our country. But I think that we've moved past that. And I think the government of national unity has realized that, there are going to be pieces of legislation that we may not have agreed with when we were in different sides of sort of the political aisle. But now, for instance, my role is to unite the education sector, because there are 13.5 million learners who are looking to us as leaders and as policymakers and as lawmakers to lead them so that we can be able to make sure that they have better education outcomes. South Africa has been very good at making sure that we've got access to education in the past 30 years since democracy. But now is the time to talk about what is the quality of that education. And that, for me, is the obsession that I have. We have to be able to have quality education so that we can have a skilled workforce and grow our economy so that we can really bring down that unemployment rate.
Artists are paying tribute to the work of Frédéric Bruly Bouabré. The artist once represented Ivory Coast at the Venice Biennale and exhibited at New York's Museum of Modern Art. He's best known for having invented a syllabary for the Ivorians' Bété's language script. An exhibition marks the 10th anniversary of his death, titled Bété Writing, Heritage and Future in a Digital Age. Julia Guggenheim had a look.
These students discover an exhibition dedicated to Frédéric Bruly Bouabré. the artist who created a syllabary of 448 signs to write the Bété language in 1956. Little known to the Bété ethnic group to this day.
I'm Bété, but I never learned the language. I've never learned the Bété script. It allows me to learn a bit about my language. It allows me to learn. So I'm really happy.
A new generation of artists has been inspired by his work. Adam created a typography based on his writing.
Donc la, cha, ri, té.
In Bété script, each character corresponds to a syllable.
Tous les autres caractères sont basés sur un concept.
All the typefaces are based on concepts from the Bété culture. Bouabré wanted to preserve the memory of his people, to pass it on to younger generations like you.
La transmettre aux jeunes générations comme vous aujourd'hui. À cette époque-là, on est en 1956.
Back then, in 1956, on the eve of independence, he wanted to show that Africans could also create and assert themselves.
Les Africains aussi peuvent créer, peuvent s'affirmer.
Adam is digitalizing the script in an effort to modernize and widen its use.
La majorité des écritures africaines.
African scripts are underrepresented in the digital world. By encoding the Bété script in the Unicode standard, this will enable the Bété script to be better present in digital form, so that it can be used on a computer keyboard.
An application will be available to write in Bété when the work is completed.
The digitization of his handwriting would have pleased him, because during his lifetime, he wanted his writing to be valued.
A further step towards spreading this script to the 800,000 Bété speakers in Ivory Coast.
And this report concludes our edition of Eye on Africa. Thank you for watching.
Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith.
All the latest in politics, economics and the arts in Africa on France 24. Our journalists are in every region, every country, to report on the emergence of a continent of unparalleled riches, bringing you Africa's stories on France 24.
Thanks for joining us. See you again. Take care.
Liberté, égalité, actualité. France 24, every art form.
Liberté, égalité, actualité. Your stories inspire the future. Your daily lives create the news. Your cultures, struggles and successes are at the heart of our programs. We tell the stories of those who made our planet and those who are building it. We tell the story of the world, shaped by the lives of those who live there.
Liberté, égalité, actualité.